The purpose of this video is to provide a brief recap of the material covered in our lecture on 16th June 2016 when the topic was accounting for companies. What we covered in that class was, firstly, revision of the previous week, secondly, introducing how to prepare a set of accounts from a trial balance all the way through to financial statements. We looked at a particular question, Nelson Limited, and then I told you about material that was available for you to download on Blackboard. Nelson Limited is a fairly basic question, so I need you to prepare a written solution to that for the class on 23rd of June. So we start with the trial balance and some additional information, but I always go straight to the very last line of the question first, required, to make sure you understand exactly what's required of you in an exam question. So the starting point here is the trial balance, which is simply a listing of various balances. All are either debit or credit. Now, a very important point to keep in mind is that every single heading that you see there in that trial balance has to appear once and once only in the finished financial statements that you're going to prepare later on. So we have here all those debit and credit balances. Then we have some additional information. You can see the notes 1 to 6 there. So you have to deal with each one of those. But the third element is the bit that people sometimes overlook. The trial balance also contains a lot of important information. For example, you can see there the debentures are described as 12% debentures. And that means that the annual interest rate on those debentures is 12%. So you need to look and see, is the debenture interest paid 12% of the value of those debentures? If it's not, then you need to make an accrual. Other things to watch out for are the pieces of information about the share capital. Is it authorized? We're not too bothered about authorized capital. We're more interested in issued share capital, ordinary shares and preference shares. And what's the nominal value of each share? Are they £1? Are they 50 pence or whatever? In this case, they are ordinary shares and preference shares, and they are all £1 each. So we will come back to that when we're doing the workings to this particular question. And then I went through some additional material which helps you to prepare your solution. So you go through those slides. I just want to talk briefly about one item, and that is the final one. You have to do all the workings to support the figures in your P&L and balance sheet. My exam questions always state that all workings must be shown. So you have to choose for yourself whether you want to do notes or other types of workings or journal entries or T accounts or some combination of all of those. But a lot of the marks in exam questions are going to go for the workings that you have shown me to back up the figures in the accounts. So make sure you do sufficient workings to enable me to see where all your figures are coming from. So the first exercise that you have to do is to complete this first template, which is simply the trial balance reproduced and 2 additional columns. One which asks you to classify each item in the trial balance as being an asset or a liability, an income or an expense. And you're going to use the material which was on the earlier slide, telling you what debits mean and where they go, what credits mean and where they go. So when you've completed that, then the extra column is to explain your choice of classification. So it's important that you don't just learn these off by heart, but that you actually understand what these various items mean. So after completing that first template, we then move on to the second template, which is a P&L account. This is a standard layout, so it's standard things like sales, cost of sales, etc. And as you can see, I've left some rows empty for you to put in the various expenses that you have identified as being expenses from the trial balance. So eventually then you'll be able to calculate your profit before tax, profit after tax, retained profits, etc. Then the third template is something similar now for the balance sheet. So you need to fill in all the different types of assets and liabilities. And then the final template is fixed asset note. Now in this particular question, there's only one category of fixed assets, furniture, fittings and equipment. But if you had 3 or 4 different types of fixed assets, you summarize all the information there in that note and then maybe put one figure into the balance sheet. So the next step would be to take a list of balances where they're not identified as being debits or credits. And when you have a bit of experience of doing these types of questions, you'll be able to identify what those items are and then put them into a trial balance format for debits and credits. Also, we're going to use this type of question as an exercise for incomplete records, where there's some information missing. For example, you have to calculate the cost of sales figure from some of the information, but not all of the information. So that's a brief introduction to what we covered on the 16th of June. We will meet again on the 23rd of June, when I need you to have completed a written attempt at Nelson Limited. Now feel free to do that in Excel if you want to, and I'll see you on the 23rd of June, and thanks for watching this video, and hopefully you'll have found it some help to you. See you next week.